From the Great Basin to the Rockies to the four corners of Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico. Dwayne Benson here for KMMU Main Street Media, Utah, coming to you live. We're streaming on YouTube, Rumble, X, Twitter, and our website, kmmu.org. Please join our host, Dan Fillmore, for Let's Talk Utah's Dan the Eagle.
What is up, my YouTube family, the X family, the Rumble family, all the people who tune into my show, all 1 billion of you. I know there's so many who listen. We have an amazing show today, and it's actually not live. So what Dwayne said in that little intro was a lie. And I hate to lie to you, but well, I'm telling you the truth now, so it's not a lie. We are recording right now on Saturday, a little bit earlier, because the person that we have today is actually in Europe. She, first woman on our show. Congrats to her. I'm not a sexist. I just don't have any friends who are women. That's just my own problem. She is in England right now. She is working for a nonprofit organization that helps religious freedom all throughout the world. And right now they're in England. So we're really excited to have her. She is French as well. I know we're supposed to hate French people as Americans, but she's French American. So we can get past that. We can like her. She's great. Before we jump in, make sure that you are subscribed to our YouTube channel, Main Street Media Utah. You can watch us on Rumble, X, or YouTube. And we stream live on Wednesdays at 4:30. Today's an exception. We're going to jump right into it. So I'm going to bring in Celine Rachel. I probably said that horribly. Let's see what she says. Hey, Celine, did I say your name right?
You did.
Rachel, is that right?
It's Rachel, that's right.
Rachel, all right.
Good to see you, Dan.
Good to see you too. Thanks for being on here. Celine is our French expert, all things French, and apparently all things English now because you are in Parliament. Is that correct?
That's right. I've been doing some parliamentary work here for the past few months, so I can't say I've rubbed shoulders with Keir Starmer yet, but I have written some letters to David Lammy. So
Okay.
there's that.
I'm sure a lot of the people in our audience wouldn't want you to just rub shoulders. They'd want you to give them a good bump, but you don't have to respond to that because you have to be bipartisan. But I don't think a lot of Americans even know who Keir Starmer is, and those of us that do don't like him. But tell us a little bit about what your group does. Tell me about what you're doing in England, and yeah, we'll start from there.
Well, I help members of parliament do their job. So hopefully I'm kind of doing them a favor. I'm a parliamentary desk officer for the all-party parliamentary group that specifically works with the freedom of religion or belief. And this is not a niche issue, though many parliaments and many people might believe that. It's actually an underlying issue for a lot of human freedoms. And it is, to me, and I'll say this time and time again, for me it's the litmus test of any country's level of freedom for its people, is how free it is to worship or believe, in this shared humanity that we all share. So, yeah, I've been speech writing, I've been writing questions, I've been facilitating dialogue and facilitating relationships between parliamentarians and FORB. We'll just call it FORB from now on, because freedom of religion or belief has quite a few syllables.
Okay, yeah.
So FORB. And stakeholders and other organizations, nonprofit organizations. I do a lot of research, Amnesty International, Aid to the Church in Need, Open Doors. I'm not sure that many Americans or many people are looking at these sites, but they're vetted organizations that
I've never heard of them.
of religion or belief around the world.
Hmm.
And there's some pretty gnarly violations currently happening.
Yeah, so that's been an interesting thing, seeing Europe kind of slide into this authoritarian, strong government, anti-Christian, anti-religious continent. And we're gonna jump into that a little bit later, specifically in the context of religion. which is what you're kind of working on. The reason I invited Celine on here in the first place, and I had no idea that she was actually in England. I thought she was just hanging out here in Utah. But then she's like, I'm not even in the country. I was like, that's crazy. But so she's got a lot of really interesting things that she's going to talk about that I had no idea we are going to talk about. The reason I wanted her to come on was because of the French politician named Marine Le Pen, who was the front runner for basically to become the prime minister, or is it the president in France?
President, yeah.
To become the president of France in the next election against Emmanuel Macron. Because a lot of people don't like Macron and people really like Le Pen. But a massive, massive scandal happened where now Marine Le Pen is banned from running. And so a lot of people are saying that this is similar to what happened.
Death penalty.
Yeah. That this is exactly like what happened with Trump. With Trump, they tried to put him in jail. They came up with a bunch of lawsuits against him so that he wouldn't be able to run. And in America, we were actually able to ignore those things. But it actually sounds like in Marine Le Pen's case, she will not be able to run for office for the next 5 years, all because of some kind of clerical issue. So, Celine, from your perspective, looking at this as someone who has ties to France, what are your initial thoughts? You think this is fair? Give us kind of how you feel.
I think there are underlying conversations and underlying interests that we're not aware of, as usually happens in parliaments. There's so much going on. There's so much happening, so many interests. And I think in Marine's case...
Oh, you say it all proper, Marine.
Oui, Marine Le Pen. Emmanuel Macron. Any more French words you want to
No, but just know you're talking to a bunch of Americans.
Right. Well, learn French. Learn it past high school, please. I think it is a sort of a political trial. It seems to me this has circumvented the natural due process of law. What the French are saying is that this is like a judicial coup d'etat.
Mm-hmm.
So some are quite worried about that. And it's 30% of the vote. So you've got 30% of the population who will now be without a candidate to vote for. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be something. And then... Yeah, it's...
Let me ask you this. If knowing, so basically she was charged for embezzlement. Mm-hmm. Money was shifted in places, I guess. Do you know the details about what specifically she's being charged of?
So that's the interesting thing. Most of the news channels, including the banners that we saw on the screen following the court's decision, I don't think any of them cited any specific reasons, which then really adds weight to this political coup d'etat, or, this isn't judicial, this isn't fair by due process of law. It's actually just a political issue that has turned into quite a large constitutional question mark.
Right. Because it kind of sounds like they're getting after her for something that's like not that big of a deal.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. And then of course it's very easy to extrapolate, like what's the word? Exaggerate some things, especially politically, because it's all about the optics, and I'm definitely learning that where I'm at. Optics matter. So in this case, kind of begs the question, what's the leeway for what's being said? Was it 10 years of embezzlement? Was it 29,000 here? Was it something else?
Right. So what I'm reading online, and I'm going to share this screen really fast so that we can all kind of look at it. From what I'm just reading on this CBC News, so this is Canadian, so who knows if we can actually believe it. It says Le Pen and officials from the party formerly known as the National Front were accused of having used money intended for European Union Parliament aids to pay staff who worked for the party between 2004 and 2016. So this is something that happened literally 9 years ago, and they're bringing it up right as soon as she is getting really good in the polls. So that to me as an American, that is a bunch of red flags, because they did the same thing with Trump. They said, Trump, you lied on this one business thing. You said that your building was worth more back in like 2004. Years ago. No one said anything. No one complained. You're just making this thing up. And they took this money that was supposed to go one place and they paid off another thing 9 years ago. So how is that, like you said, optically, how can anybody believe that Marine Le Pen is actually guilty of this? I see it and I think, nah, that's a bunch of crap.
Yeah, the only numbers that I've seen personally are like 5,000 to here, 29,000 to here, but it's not about personal enrichment. And she said this, and some others have repeated it, that it's not about personal gain specifically. It's more just like political, do work. I mean, I can tell you from my perspective as an intern, with the type of work that I've been doing, and the amount of like emotional tax and just time and all of it, like it's a lot of work, and I don't know how much of the payments that she's given are for,
It sounds like they're for employees, people who
yeah,
work
that's
for the
really what it's
party.
sounding like to me, which then begs the question, why is it that it's being put this way, and how are they getting away with it, and why do they keep, this is quite concerning on a justice level and like a free society level.
Extremely. So the craziest thing about it, so the court finds her guilty of embezzlement for this little thing that happened. It could have happened back in 2006, by the way, or 2004. So this could literally be 20 years old. So it's either between 20 years old and 9 years old, somewhere in that range.
Talk about skeletons in the closet.
Yeah. I mean, that maybe didn't even exist, that weren't even skeletons at all. You make a mountain out of a molehill. They are saying that she cannot run for the next 5 years for political office, which will, of course, coincidentally make her ineligible to run against Emmanuel Macron in 2027. So that seems conspiratorial to me. She said, I represent millions of French people, and millions of French people are not going to have a chance to vote for the person that they want. So what do you think is the outcome of this, Celine?
I don't want to say it.
It can't be good.
No.
And I don't think that France has as many protections against this kind of stuff as the United States does, like the presumption of innocence, being able to appeal your sentence. I think basically if you are convicted guilty in a French court, you're convicted guilty in a French court, and there's nothing you can do about it.
There really isn't. But what's most concerning that I've found in what I've been looking, reading, is going along with those banners, lacking information as to what exactly was, what's going on here, what laws exactly. And perhaps these decisions will be regretted, but based on the language, there's nothing for the public themselves to go off of to, what's the word? Protest isn't quite the exact word I'm looking for. Sorry, bilingual brain. The means to resist. So, in the French, we love to resist, but without the means, we can't. So,
French people love to burn down their cities and protest over all sorts of stuff. So I can't imagine this is going to go well.
No, and it's not just an administrative disagreement with European Parliament. It's, maybe that is what it is, but yeah, there's just some missing pieces here, and even the mainstream media, the way that they're citing these reasons or more putting this, doesn't give much power to the people.
Yeah.
which is number one in a democratically free society
Right.
is power to the people.
Right. And
So
ideally, you would be able to give people power by letting them elect somebody. But when you just take them off the ballot for a minor clerical
political,
issue, it
yeah.
it's crazy. So here's you tell me if I'm totally wrong. I think that there's a perception, and you grew up in the United States, so I think you probably can attest to this. There's kind of a perception that um, America is similar to Europe and Canada, that we all kind of share the same values. We all like democracy. We all like freedom and blah, blah, blah. I don't think that that's actually true. I think that America is uniquely positioned in the world to uphold freedom and justice, even though we don't do a great job out of it sometimes. They tried to do this to Trump, but our system prevailed, and now he's the president. Whereas Marine Le Pen, it's like, what are you even going to do? So I was thinking about this from like a European perspective. We broke away from England and we said we don't want to be a part of Europe. And Europe has done its own thing now for a whole long time. And they've had wars where America has kind of come in and helped with things. But it seems like Europe isn't actually what we think it is or what we've been taught that it is. Because this kind of stuff is stuff that we would expect to happen in like a third world country, but it's happening in France. So, do you think that Americans get the idea that Europe is this big free place? Do they get that wrong? Am I wrong? What do you think?
I think if Americans are thinking Europe is free or freer than America, they definitely need a wake up call.
What makes you say that?
Definitely. Well, um, tell me if this is happening in America, and maybe it is. But if I were to go stand on
Oh
the
yeah.
street next to an abortion clinic and just stand there, and if the police were to come up to me in America and say, "What are you doing?" and I say, "I'm just standing here," and then they kind of interrogate me a bit and they get to the bottom of, "Oh, I'm standing here just silently praying in my head." Do you think in America I would be arrested for that?
Well, that actually did happen under the Biden administration.
It
But
did.
but Trump pardoned them, and I don't think most Americans would agree with that. And I think that that is a rare occasion. But
All
in
right.
the UK, it's not. And yeah, take it from there.
Well, that's just a really minor example and probably not the best example for this question specifically. But when I'm in France, how do I say? I don't feel I'm standing on free soil,
Hmm.
but I do feel that when I'm standing in American soil. And perhaps it's just because of my education or the ideologies I've been raised and spent most of my time around. But then again, all of those ideologies and education I've had in France versus what I've had in America, two completely different things.
What would you say is like the biggest difference that you don't feel like you're free in France?
Well, it seems it seems like there are just a lot more hoops to jump through in order to get things done. And also there's this sentiment which is very French, and it's this is my culture. This is how we've always sort of worked. But there's this sentiment that I've noticed, at least in my life, that entrepreneurship and doing things differently and really having the provisions for progression and the provisions set out for free thinking just don't really exist in France as they do in the US.
Hmm.
At least that's my personal observation and sentiment. For example, if I want to open a business and just launch myself as a young person, I'm definitely not going to do that in France.
Just because there's too many hoops to jump through?
Even more than that, there's not this sentiment of I'm going to be taken care of. There's not this like underlying protection mechanism as much as I see in the US. It just doesn't feel as what's the word? Doesn't feel as solid.
Hmm.
I don't feel like I'm solidly planting my feet.
Yeah.
when I'm in France.
So that's from like a business perspective. Like I think
Yes.
most people would say, like, if you want to make a business, you make it in America, because tons of consumers, very easy laws to navigate, pretty reasonable
Yeah.
taxes.
But
But
I'm starting to change my mind about that myself. But
well,
I would
yeah,
just say for the whole France versus America, I wouldn't.
just
I
the
wouldn't
feeling.
accept it.
Well, not going from like a business perspective, because that doesn't really interest me as much. More of
Right.
like a freedom perspective though, because like when
Mm.
I'm in the United States, I feel like I can say whatever I want, right? I can put whatever I want onto social media, right? Even though they tried to like attack that and get rid of that, it's gone now. Like censorship is over essentially, and people can say and do pretty much whatever they want in the United States. And people who are politically persecuted, like Trump is, end up winning because we see that as a bad thing. And but it seems like in the UK there's hate speech laws. In France there's hate speech laws.
Yeah.
In New South Wales in Australia, you can't pray in public to help somebody not be trans. They banned praying for
Yeah,
certain
and I can
things.
tell you that I've been working with that specific bill in the UK for the past few months. I've been in conversation with lawyers and lords, and we've been having roundtable discussions, trying to figure out if these clauses are going to set the provisions for something like prayer being actually rendered illegal in the UK. But
Wow.
that's kind of on the beginning stages of
See,
conversation.
like the fact though that that's even a conversation blows Americans' minds,
Yeah.
because we
Oh, it's here.
think
It's happening.
that the UK and England and Europe and Australia are like us, who value freedom, who value rights of citizens, but they don't. They like power, and this is exactly why America left England. This is why we wanted
Yeah.
to be our own country,
I
to
mean, look at
avoid this stuff.
the monarchy, the monarchy.
Monarchy.
Well, the monarchy. I mean, England has had a long history with that. Still kind of here.
Right.
To be real, it's still here. So
Yeah, and so that kind of culture in Canada, for example, they didn't have a revolutionary war. Australia never had a revolutionary war. Europe has been through two massive wars in the last century that basically turned everything upside down. But there hasn't been a real conversation about freedom in Europe. It seems like America is really the only place where freedom is alive. But I mean, it's like, now that Trump's elected, I feel like it's a little bit better. But like when Biden was president and we heard these stories about, people being arrested for praying at abortion clinics, people getting demonetized on YouTube and on Facebook and on Twitter because they had wrong opinions, social media suppressing stories that were going to be bad for the ruling class. Like, we still have that in America, but we see it as bad. In Europe, it's like right in your face, and it doesn't seem like anyone can do anything about it.
that's true. That's
It's
true. We
just
do
it's
have this
just sad.
sentiment that this is just what it's become, and this is the direction we are headed in for certain things. And just from my perspective, which is, I don't claim to know a lot, but from my personal perspective, there are bills that are being, passed and attempting to be passed that would directly affect in the future these sorts of freedoms, just based on the way they're written. And a part of me wants to really, I wish that there were more conversations between parties. I think we just don't listen to each other in such a political climate. That if we did, perhaps we could understand more where people are coming from when they're writing such clauses or such bills. I mean, the conversion practice prohibition ban bill that we've been looking at is only 3 pages long. But it's I'm just not sure what kind of agenda there is. Yeah, but
Well, it's a heavy-handed push to enforce the state's government. And in Europe, they'd never really had a conversation about the government's power. So the government just kind of does whatever it wants. And they see Christians, in my opinion, as a major threat to their power, because they see God as their power and not the government, and that threatens their power. That's genuinely how I view the whole thing, and that's why I think what you're doing with freedom of religion is so important, because you have to have a God-fearing people in order to keep the government in check. As soon as people stop fearing God or believing in him, the government is going to reflect that, and all the power will accrue to them.
100%. And it's what we're seeing in authoritarian regimes like
England.
I don't want to name any names.
It's like authoritarian regimes like
even
China,
go even more east.
Australia.
Go even more east, because there's a part of the world we haven't even entered the conversation about them yet. We should, because we're all in this together. But and I don't know how much I can say, but
Where?
we haven't even talked about the Middle East.
Oh well, they're hopeless.
Hey,
I'm not worried about them.
It is of our interest.
That's true.
Because you have this authoritarian belt that is starting in North Korea, going all the way to Iran, and again, I don't know how much I can say here, but I will just say that I've been in some pretty high security meetings with ambassadors to North Korea and with wonderful, wonderful people from Iran who are really pushing for a democratic Iran.
Yeah,
and these are. And I think there's a provision there for that to be successful in Iran, because there's obviously this vacuum, and with the vacuum you have potential and possibility. And I think we're going in the right direction with a lot of this, but we need more arms. We need more help. Sorry, wrong arms. These arms, not those arms. We need more voice. We need more support for this sort of thing, and that's the type of thing that's just not on people's agenda right now, because they're so distracted and we have other interests. I get it.
Well, it's hard for Europe.
It's coming to our shores.
It's hard for Europe's
shores. It's coming to America's shores.
Yeah. Well, it's hard for Europe to really even focus on freeing a group of people that are oppressed by religious laws when they themselves do the same thing, Like,
yes.
I could see it happening back in the 1940s or 50s when people were still Christian and they actually believed in their own nations. But it seems like France and the UK are basically just like, well, we have no identity. Anyone can come here, come whoever they want, and we're just going to get mad at Christians if they complain. That to me, because the whole reason, in my opinion, that Marine Le Pen is not going to win the election in 2027 is because she said so many things that were anti-immigrant. If she hadn't said anything about immigration, she would still be on the ballot. 100%. That's my opinion. What do you think?
I mean, immigration is... Oh, I could say so many things, but I don't know.
Well, we don't have to talk about that. That's fine. We can
because I need to be...
But I just see a pattern. Trump was super...
As you said, I need to be diplomatic about this.
Sure, totally fine. I'll just go on my little rant. Trump was extremely strong against illegal immigration, and I think that was part of the reason why everyone hated him, because they actually want our countries to be full of people who don't share traditional European values, which is Christianity.
Judeo-Christian.
They don't want those people in their country. They want people who are Muslim, who like to have a strong state. And then if you say anything about it, they call you Islamophobic. That's what you see all the time in Europe. And I guarantee you, if Marine Le Pen hadn't said anything about it, she would still be in their good graces. She would still be eligible to run. That's clearly the reason why they want
I think I can
her
agree
out.
with that. Yeah.
I think it's
That's
crazy.
Awesome.
But we're going to move on. That's just my little rant. So we've already gone 30 minutes, Celine. You said you can only do 15. Look at you. You're doing great. So
well, let's keep at it.
Let's keep going. I got one other topic for you, and then I'll let you go. So you were talking to me a little bit about how Europe not only is a country or a continent that does not share American values, but it does share our money. It takes a lot of our money. It loves American money. So you were saying that when USAID got shut down, that sent tidal waves through Europe and through the UK. Tell me more about that.
Oh my goodness, we felt it immediately, especially where I've been working. So to give you an image of how this works, So I've just been a parliamentary desk intern officer for an all-party parliamentary group. So an all-party parliamentary group within the UK Parliament is literally a group of parliamentarians cross-party. So you have Labour, you have Independent, you have Lib Dems, you've got the SNP, DUP, Conservatives, Independent, whatever. You've got all these cross-party parliamentarians who are working together in the same focus. So this group is specifically focused on FORB, right?
Which is your organization that fights for religious freedoms.
We'll put it that way. It's, I'll get back to the organization part, because it's not an organization, it's a parliamentary group. The parliamentary group
Got it.
is not funded by the government. That doesn't work that way. In order to be funded, it must come from an outside organization. So it has to be a 501c3, the equivalent in the US, charity, right? So we need charitable donations in order to function. So the work that I'm doing, in order for it to actually be possible to do, we need charitable organizations. This is where a secretariat comes into play. So the secretariat for the APPG is the FORB Foundation, and they're a registered charity. They're one of they're the secretariat, and so all of the stakeholders to the group go through the secretariat in order to support the work that is being done by the all-party parliamentary group, or by the FORB Foundation. So we have stakeholders like, I'll just name one that you're familiar with. BYU, they're a stakeholder. You have ICLRS, you have the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints. These are stakeholders within the FORB Foundation, to the FORB Foundation, which allow certain things like delegations to take place so that parliamentarians can get in the field, on the ground, and go see for themselves the types of violations being taken place. And really connect directly with the people who are being persecuted against for FORB, or and then get into the conversation with governments whose constitutions are either not being upheld, or whose constitutions perhaps have had added provisions which either negate or nullify the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, Article 18, for example, which is the freedom to practice and hold any belief or religious affiliation as you wish. So, for example, Egypt, I was doing some research. I found in the 2014 Constitution that there's an article, an added article, which nullifies any previously signed declarations. Funny,
convenient.
huh?
That's very
Isn't that great? So, the APPG really sheds a light to lords and baronesses and members of parliament.
How does USAID get involved in this?
Sorry, yes,
I'm trying to follow it. I'm trying to follow. Where does USAID come in?
So the USAID is, if you look at all these organizations that are, stakeholders.
Okay.
Where are they getting their money?
Is it all from the federal government?
Probably not all of it, no.
Lots.
But the ones who have organizations who are then their stakeholders, who are getting USAID.
Gone.
Overnight.
Well, I hear that as a good thing. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Tell me.
So, obviously, right now, it's like the Band-Aid has been ripped off.
Right.
So it feels pretty painful, but it's not just about a Band-Aid being ripped off. It's about the fact that there are thousands, millions of people who have been relying on this aid, and overnight no longer have those resources, no longer have those services.
Are you talking about like people in Africa? Or like, what are you talking about?
Not just. I mean, there are other organizations and communities who have been beneficiaries of USAID who are not necessarily on the African continent. But if we want to talk about Africa, I'll tell you why, in my personal opinion, and this is obviously with a long view, why this is perhaps a positive thing. Because when you remove these helps and these aids, that's when a real bona fide economy can then be built up and then can flourish.
Right.
So that's what I have to say about that. But for all the other people for all the other organizations then who were staying afloat or who were operating thanks to USAID or in part thanks to USAID, yeah, we have some reorganization to do, reorganizing, and this is an opportunity. So I think it's going to take a lot of big thinkers and a lot of social entrepreneurs to step into this vacuum and to see the potential and the opportunity for what it is. Obviously, many of us are just pieces in a really large puzzle,
Right.
but
I think it's interesting that you say that the canceling of USAID is, in a lot of cases, is a good thing, because that's how I view it as well. I think that if you're going
not
to
in all
be
cases, but in some.
sure, I think, though, this is my crazy opinion. I think that if you're a charitable organization, you shouldn't be allowed to take any government funding. I really don't think you should, because charity is charity. It has to be given voluntarily. I have to say, I am going to give my money to you intentionally under my, what's the word I'm looking for? My consent. I'm consenting to give you this money, and because I agree with what you're doing. Taxes are not charity. I don't get to choose if I get to pay my taxes, Celine. They get taken right from my bank account every 2 weeks. A big chunk of it gets taken out by the government. And at the end of every year, I have to then tell them what I made, and maybe I get some of it back. Maybe. That to me is not a charity. I like what you guys are doing. I like the idea of having a charity going into a government and saying, hey, you're not respecting religious freedom. You need to. I love that idea. That's why I pay tithing to my church. I choose to use
Yes,
my money
principle
how
of
I
agency.
want to. The government
Absolutely.
shouldn't do it for me.
Yes. And what you're saying here reminds me of what I'm not sure if it's President King, Prime Minister, what have you, of not Saudi Arabia but Dubai.
Mm-hmm.
What he's said, they're a tax-free society,
Mm-hmm.
as many other. Um, what's the name for like Oman and
Gulf
Qatar?
states.
Voila, yes, the Gulf states.
Voila.
Go take a look at their lifestyle and quality of life.
Yep.
Go take a look at that function. And I love what he has to say about the fact that, yeah, we don't tax our citizens. What for? You know,
Mm-hmm.
they're
Well,
using their money in the
yeah,
way that
they
our
take
society.
their cash from the from all the oil they get, which is,
Right.
it's one system to do it. Ours
But
is
that sentiment,
right,
like,
right. It's funny that, and like, I hope your organization finds funding, and it sounds like if you guys are connected with BYU, that's an organization that is well ran and is funded by people through their consent.
oh,
And
well, we're
so,
always looking for new stakeholders. So if you know
but
anybody,
I was going to
send
say,
us.
I'm sure there's plenty of people who would love to donate and be a part of it. So tell me again the name of your organization.
It's the Forb Foundation, FORB.
Forb Foundation, so people can donate there. So yeah, go check that out, obviously, if you want to donate. I'm someone who actually is very charitable. I just hate feeling like I am forced to pay
And we
something
hate
with my
waste
tax
as
dollars
well,
without my
right?
consent.
I'm all for efficiency and for
Right.
streamlining processes to really avoid as much waste as possible. I think that's in thanks part to my frugality and, uh, you know, living after a war. You know, those generational scars have been passed down, but it's a positive. Again, it's just depends on how we see it. When we see this vacuum, there's that potential for, you know, re-oiling the wheel but not reinventing it. So, yeah.
Well, I that was a great conversation, Celine. I'm really grateful that you were able to come on and give us a American perspective. Still, obviously, you're very American, but also an interesting European/French perspective.
And Middle Eastern, but I did not say too much about
What are you
our
talking about? Your
cousins,
Middle Eastern perspective. What are you talking
our
about?
cousins, you know, because we are cousins, Judeo-Christian and
Oh, the
Islam.
Jews. Oh
No,
man,
no,
there's
the Muslim.
oh,
Yeah,
That's not
So
Judeo-Christian.
no, I mean Christians and our cousins, the Muslims. So
What are you afraid to say the word Muslim? You're like the Christians and the, you know.
our cousins.
I know we didn't talk about them.
No.
My opinion about like Islam and like the Muslim states is that there's a few that work, but most of them don't. And they're not my problem though. They're really not, because I don't share hardly anything with them historically. I don't share land with them. I am worried about America. And the only reason I even care about Europe is because we're supposedly allies. So, but I mean,
That's changing for sure.
but that's changing. It feels like Europe is just sliding more and more towards China, going more in that authoritarian direction.
Mhm.
And America is kind of like this city on a hill that's by itself, that really is the beacon for freedom. And I'm grateful Trump won, but I'm worried that in like 4 years we're just going to have another Democrat that tries to push us more to the way of Europe, and I don't want that.
Hmm.
Europe's a nice place to visit, but not a good place to emulate, in my opinion.
Hmm. Well, I could say a lot of things about that, Europe specifically. It's sort of like referring to Africa as Africa, because you have Poland
That's
and then
true.
you have Portugal.
True.
You have
So
the
true.
UK and Greece, and they're
You have
absolutely different
California and you have
function.
Utah. Yeah.
Function. Come on, sorry, it's like almost midnight, so French is kicking in. Sorry,
She turns
but
French when she's tired.
yeah. So it's like Nigeria and South Africa. I mean, it's just I think the more that we can look at the world, um, how do I say this? Like not in
terms of like groups.
yes, but truly as all of us together, and this goes back in line with a lot of what's the word, conspiracy theorists.
Mm-hmm.
It creates this like them versus us sentiment, which is
Yeah.
truly manufactured. It's truly artificial. We're all in this together, and none of us are inherently more evil than the other. So it's really about interfaith dialogue and getting us all on the table to understand priorities and interests. And obviously, when you have such politically charged, the optics and the interest, it's kind of difficult to do that. But I really think that if we can just come back to our collective humanity and truly treat our cousins as our cousins, we're all in a family together, even if we're maybe estranged or some of us feel like, okay, he's a lunatic. But truly getting back to the table and understanding that protecting the freedom of religion or belief is a truly underlying provision that allows all of this to be possible.
It's true. Very
So
true.
I don't think anyone is necessarily a beacon on any hill. I do agree with where you're coming from. And yes, America could be considered as that beacon on the hill. But you'd say that to anyone else and they'll think, well, what about the way my society functions? I've grown up here and whatever. But yeah, it's just having a bit more tolerance might not be the word, because yes, we should not tolerate those sort of blatant, outright attacks on freedom, but maybe bridging some gaps and creating bridges to have more dialogue would be absolutely beneficial to just better understanding who we are.
I admire what you're doing a lot in the UK. It really needs it. And that's not to say, like you said, that America's perfect at it either. We need extremely strong provisions on religious freedom as well here. The fact that Biden was able to jail several people, some old ladies, for praying by an abortion clinic is crazy. It's insane that it could ever happen in the United States. So authoritarianism, lack of religious freedom, your freedom being taken away is always 2 steps away, no matter where you are. And so you've got to just be able to safeguard those things and take care of it well. Well, thanks, Celine, again for coming on. I hope your country of France can I don't know. I really hope Le Pen can run and win. I think that'd be great for France. But if not her, then someone else can come up and maybe take her mantle. But it's rough. I hope everyone goes and checks out Forb and will donate to Celine so that way they don't have to keep sucking the American taxpayer dry. $36 trillion
And also
in debt,
so I
by the
can
way.
keep doing the work that I'm doing.
So Celine can keep working with these people, and you can tell she's good at it. She's sweet. She's nice. She wants to get along with everybody. If I was in there, I wouldn't do so well. I'd be like, what are you guys doing?
Oh,
I would be
Dan,
smashing
knowing
heads.
you wouldn't last a week, my guy.
No, I couldn't do it. But that's why Celine is there. Donate to her. And
I will make sure that it is used efficiently and ethically.
wow, that's the
what
Celine
I'm-
promise. You can take
That's
that
what
to the
I'm
bank.
after. Efficiency and ethics.
Well, thanks again, everybody, for listening to this conversation with Celine and I. I don't know if the show is going to keep going on Wednesday, so I will just do a little ad read. Again, you're listening to Main Street Media Utah. This is every single Wednesday at 4:30. You can catch me, Dan the Eagle, with some awesome guests like Celine. Every Wednesday at 4:30. You can see us live on YouTube, X, and Rumble. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we will pass it on to whatever Dan is doing in a couple days.
Good luck, Dan.
Thank you.